Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. Today we're taking a look at something that's probably part of your daily life, whether you realize it or not.
That's right.
Meta's privacy policy. We're going to try to break down exactly what data they're collecting across Facebook, Instagram, Messenger, and even MetaQuest.
All the platforms.
All of them, yep. We've got a ton of articles, research, and even some explanations straight from Meta to help us out.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting.
Yeah. By the end of this, you'll have a much clearer picture of how Meta uses your data and what it means for you.
And your privacy.
Exactly.
So one thing that really surprised me is how Meta's data collection goes way beyond just people with accounts.
Oh, really? So you're telling me even if I don't have a Facebook profile, they're still tracking me?
You got it. Just by visiting a public Facebook page or watching a video, they can pull information from your browser and app logs.
No way.
Yeah, and they even grab some basic device info.
Wow, so they're watching even the casual observers.
They are. And of course, we all know they collect the stuff we give them directly when we make an account. Fill out our profiles, post comments, likes, all that.
Right.
But what I find really fascinating is the less obvious stuff they pick up passively.
Passive information gathering. Okay, give me an example. What are we talking about here?
Well, your device spills a lot of secrets. The model, the operating system you're using, even things like your battery level and signal strength.
Hold on. My battery level. What do they need that for?
It's all about painting a picture of you. They're trying to understand your habits.
I see.
That low battery might mean you're glued to your phone.
Yeah.
Maybe endlessly scrolling, and that gives them clues about what to show you next.
It's kind of like my phone is reporting back to Meta behind my back.
Pretty much. And it doesn't stop there. They're also collecting your network information. IP address, connection speed, nearby devices, all that good stuff.
And location data too, right?
Oh, absolutely. Even if you've got location services turned off on your phone, your IP address can still give a general idea of where you are.
So even if I'm super careful about location settings, I'm not completely off the grid.
Nope. It just shows how much data we're generating constantly just by existing online. And then there's this whole other layer of data coming from Meta's partners, those businesses, using tools like the Facebook Pixel.
Okay, I've heard of the Pixel. Can you break that down for me again?
Sure. Imagine you're shopping for some new hiking boots online, right?
Yeah.
A Facebook Pixel on that website can send info about what you're doing back to Meta.
Interesting.
So now they can connect your actions across different sites and apps.
So it's not just limited to Facebook itself.
Exactly. It all adds to this giant puzzle they're building, a really detailed picture of who you are and what you like.
Okay, I think I get the Pixel. Now, what about the audience network? What is that exactly?
Think of it as a network of apps and websites that team up with Meta to show you ads. By using all the data they have on you, Meta can help advertisers target you on those platforms.
So that's how I end up seeing ads for hiking boots on a news app after I was browsing for them earlier.
You got it. It's all about connecting the dots between your online activities.
So Meta knows who I might want to be friends with based on my contact list. That's pretty smart. Now, what about all the fun stuff we use, like camera filters and effects? Are those creating data too?
You bet they are. Every time you slap on that dog filter, Meta's collecting data. Now, to be fair, they say the facial mapping data they use isn't for identification.
Okay, so it's not all bad news.
Right. And I guess you could say the same for voice features like that Meta Assistant on their smart glasses.
Yeah, that's true.
They say the voice data is just to make those features work better.
Okay, so I'm starting to see how much data they collect. But why should I care? What does it mean for me?
It all comes down to personalization.
Right.
Meta uses this data to shape what you see in your feeds, suggest groups and friends, and tailor those ads you see.
So in a way, it's kind of helpful.
Sure, everyone likes seeing content that's relevant to them, but here's the thing.
Yeah.
It goes beyond just what you tell Meta you like.
Okay.
They're drawing conclusions about you based on your behavior, what your friends are doing, even your phone's battery level.
Wow. So my actions shape what I see, but what I see also shapes my actions.
It's a loop.
Yeah.
And speaking of shaping what you see, that brings us to ad targeting.
Right, the ads.
Meta matches advertisers with the people they want to reach by using your data.
I see.
So say an advertiser wants to sell bikes in Atlanta, Meta can target people who like cycling pages, visit bike shops online.
And even people who have cycling apps on their phone.
Exactly. They can get very specific.
So in a way, all this data collection helps make advertising more efficient.
That's one way to look at it.
True.
Right.
But it also makes me a little uneasy about my privacy.
Yeah, there are definitely two sides to this. So let's switch gears and talk about security. How is Meta using all this data to keep their platforms safe?
Okay, yeah, good point. I mean, they do have a responsibility to keep things secure.
Right. They use it for things like account verification, spotting fraud, and preventing bad behavior. They're also starting to use facial analysis.
Facial analysis, really?
Yep. They claim it helps prevent impersonation and identity theft.
So it's like a trade-off. Our data helps them protect us from other people misusing data.
Yeah, something like that. And we can't forget about the data sharing that goes on between all the Meta companies.
Wait, you mean my data from Facebook isn't just staying on Facebook? It's going to places like WhatsApp, too.
Yep, that's right. They claim it's all to improve features and security. Things like verifying accounts and spotting suspicious activity.
So it all connects back to that big ecosystem we talked about.
Exactly. It's all intertwined.
Okay, so we've talked about a lot of ways Meta is collecting and using our data. But is there anything we can do about it? Do we have any control?
Absolutely, we do.
Really?
Yeah, Meta actually gives you tools to manage your data and privacy. You can see what they have on you, download it, and even delete it.
Wait, so I can actually see everything they've collected?
You can. It's a little scary, but it's also empowering. You can see how they're using it and make decisions about what you want to keep or get rid of.
That's amazing.
Okay.
So what about those ads? Can I control those too?
You bet you can. Meta gives you ways to manage your ad preferences. You can tell them about your interests and things you absolutely don't want to see ads for. You can even limit how much they use your data for targeting.
So it's not a perfect solution, but at least I can make it a little less creepy.
Exactly. It's about taking back some of that control. Now, this all ties into something called data retention policies.
Yes, data retention. Can you remind me what that's all about?
These policies basically spell out how long Meta keeps your information.
Got it.
They say they only hold on to it as long as they need to for things like keeping your account running, legal reasons, or protecting people from harm.
Okay, so they're not just hoarding all of our data forever.
That's what they say. For example, messages you send in Messenger's vanish mode. They don't keep those around as long as regular messages.
Okay, so they are taking different features into account when it comes to how long they keep our data.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, they still get to decide.
Right. That's a good point.
So it's a bit of a balancing act. We have some control, but they still have the final say.
I see. Okay, so what about things like my search history on Facebook?
Ah, the search history.
Yeah, everyone's got something they've searched for that they probably shouldn't have.
Don't worry, you're not alone.
Good to know.
Meta's policy says they keep your search history until you either clear it or delete your account.
Oh, really? So I can just wipe the slate clean if I want to?
Yep, you have that power.
That's great. What if I don't clear it, though? Do they hold on to it forever?
They say that after about 6 months, they remove certain details from each search, like what device you used in your location. So even that data isn't kept indefinitely.
That's actually a relief. It seems like they are at least trying to balance functionality with protecting data.
They are. But here's the thing. Even with all these controls, using them effectively can be tough.
Yeah, I know what you mean. It can feel really overwhelming trying to figure out all those settings.
It's like they give you all these tools but don't tell you how to use them.
Right. What good is a powerful tool if I don't even know where to find it?
Exactly. So there's a big need for more transparency and simpler interfaces. It should be easier for everyone to understand and manage their data.
Yeah, it's like getting a super complex machine with no instruction manual.
That's a perfect analogy.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. It's clear that Meta's privacy practices are pretty complex.
They are. But this is an ongoing conversation, and things are changing all the time. As more and more people demand control, companies will have to respond with more transparency and better tools.
Yeah, hopefully. It's a process, but it seems like we're headed in the right direction.
I think so. We've seen how much data shapes our online lives, and we've uncovered some ways to navigate all of this.
But most importantly, I think we've shown that it's crucial to stay informed, ask questions, and make sure we're a part of shaping a digital world that respects our privacy and gives us real choices about our data.
Absolutely.
So keep learning, keep asking those questions, and keep this conversation going.
That's right. Until next time, stay curious.
All right, so welcome back to our deep dive into all things Meta and privacy. Last time, we really dug into how they're gathering all this data.
Yeah, it's a lot.
It is.
Yeah.
But now, let's get to the good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
What can we actually do about it?
Right. The big question, do we have any control in this whole data ecosystem?
Exactly.
And the good news is, yes, we do. Meta does actually give you some tools to manage your data and your privacy.
Okay, that's good to hear. But I gotta say, it can feel pretty overwhelming. Where do you even start?
Well, one of the most powerful tools you have is the ability to actually see what information Meta has on you.
Really? I can actually look at all of it.
Yep. You can download it. You can even delete it.
Okay, wow. That's kind of scary, but also kind of cool.
It is. It's like peeking behind the curtain, you know? You can see how they're using your data and make some decisions about what you want to keep or get rid of.
So we're not totally powerless. We do have some agency here.
Exactly. Now, what about those ads that always seem to follow you around?
Ugh, don't even get me started. It's like they're reading my mind sometimes.
Well, that's where managing your ad preferences comes in.
Ad preferences. Okay, tell me more.
You can actually go in and tell Meta what your interests are, and more importantly, what you definitely don't want to see ads about.
Yeah.
You can even put some limits on how they use your data for targeting.
So it's like fine-tuning the whole ad experience.
Yeah, it's about taking back some control and maybe making things a little less creepy.
I like the sound of that. But let's be real. They're not going to stop showing me ads completely, are they?
Probably not, no. Targeted advertising is like their bread and butter, you know? It's a big part of how they make money. But at least these tools give you a little bit of say in what you see.
Okay, that makes sense. So we can peek behind the curtain. We can tweak the ads. What other controls do we have?
Well, app permissions are a big one.
App permissions. Oh, you mean those little pop-ups asking if an app can use my camera or microphone?
Yep, exactly. And those are super important, especially when it comes to Meta's apps.
Yeah, it always seems like they want access to everything.
Right, they do. So it's really crucial to take a moment and think about what you're comfortable sharing. Don't just automatically click allow every time.
It's like setting boundaries with these apps.
That's a great way to put it. You're telling them what they can and can't do on your device. Now, remember those data retention policies we talked about earlier?
Data retention. Yeah, that was about how long they keep your info, right?
Right. So Meta says they only hold on to your data for as long as they need it, for things like running their services, following the law, or protecting users.
Okay, so it's not like they're just hoarding it all forever.
Well, that's what they say. And they claim they look at each type of data separately and think about lots of factors when making those decisions.
So, like, messages you send in Messenger's vanish mode, they wouldn't keep those as long as regular messages, right?
Exactly. They're supposed to be taking the specific features into account.
But in the end, they still have the ultimate power to decide.
Right. Unfortunately, yes. We do have some control by deleting our data, but there are limits.
That's a good point. Okay, so what about something like my Facebook search history?
Ooh, the search history. That's always a fun one.
Yeah, I think we've all searched for some questionable things at some point.
Definitely. But don't worry, Meta says they only keep your search history until you either clear it or delete your whole account.
Oh, so it's not like they're saving it forever. I can just get rid of it.
Yep. You have the power to wipe that slate clean.
Yeah.
And even if you don't clear your history, they claim that within 6 months, they remove certain details from each search.
Details. Like what?
Like what device you used and where you were when you made the search. So even that kind of passive data isn't necessarily kept forever.
Interesting. So it's not all doom and gloom. It seems like they are trying to balance their need to use our data with actually respecting our privacy.
Yeah, they are, to a certain extent. But here's the catch.
What's the catch?
Even though they offer all these controls, figuring them all out can still be super challenging.
Yeah, for sure. Trying to find the right setting in all those menus can feel like navigating a maze.
Exactly. And if users can't easily find and understand those controls, then they're not really that useful.
That's true. What good is a powerful tool if you can't even figure out how to use it?
Exactly. So there's a real need for companies like Meta to be more transparent and make things simpler for us.
Yeah, it's like they're giving us this super complicated machine without any instructions.
Perfect analogy.
Yeah.
And this whole issue of making things easier for users ties into a bigger conversation about how online privacy is constantly evolving.
Right. It feels like every day there's a new story about data breaches or privacy concerns. It's hard to keep up.
It really is. But as more people become aware of how their data is being used, there's growing pressure on companies to give us more control and be more transparent.
So it's a two-way street. Users are demanding more, and companies are slowly starting to respond.
Yep. It's an ongoing back and forth. And as we navigate all of this, it's really important to remember that true data privacy is about more than just tweaking some settings.
Right. It's about being mindful of what we share online and really thinking about the consequences.
Absolutely. It's about being an active participant in this whole digital world, not just passively accepting whatever comes our way.
Okay, so we've talked about managing our own data. But what about situations where my data might be shared with others, even if I've got strict privacy settings?
That's a great question. One example of that is how Meta handles data when you're interacting with someone they call a supervised user.
Supervised user, what does that even mean?
These are usually younger users, like teenagers. Their accounts are being monitored by a parent or a guardian. And Meta knows that data in those situations is especially sensitive, so they have specific policies for it.
Okay, so if I'm chatting with someone who has a supervised account, their parent might actually see my information.
That's right. They might see things like your username, profile pic, even whether you've blocked the supervised user.
Wow, I never would have thought about that.
Yeah.
It's a good reminder that even with privacy settings, our data isn't always completely under our control.
Exactly. It all comes back to being mindful of how we interact online and who we're interacting with. Now, what about stuff you post publicly?
Oh yeah, good point. Public posts are a whole other can of worms, right?
Right. Anything you put out there publicly on a Meta platform could potentially be seen by anyone, even people who don't have a Facebook account or anything.
So it's like shouting in a crowded room. You have no control over who hears you.
That's the perfect analogy. And once something is public, it can be shared, downloaded, even picked up by search engines.
So there's no taking it back. Once it's out there, it's out there.
Pretty much. So think carefully before you hit that post button. Meta does give you some ways to manage this, like making your account private or limiting who can see your posts.
Okay, so we're not totally at the mercy of the public. We do have some tools.
Right. It's all about knowing what those tools are and using them. Now, speaking of sharing data, let's talk about integrated partners. Remember those?
Integrated partners. Didn't we cover that already?
We touched on them briefly, but it's worth diving a little deeper. These are other companies or services that connect with Meta in different ways.
Like using your Facebook login to access other websites.
Exactly. It's super convenient.
Yeah.
But it also means those partners are getting info about you from Meta.
So my data can travel outside of just Facebook or Instagram.
Yep. It can go to these other companies that have their own rules and policies.
So even if I trust Meta, I also need to be aware of what all these other companies are doing with my data.
That's right. It can be a lot to keep track of, but it's all part of being a smart online citizen.
Okay, I'm definitely starting to see the bigger picture here. It's not just about Meta. It's about this whole web of interconnected companies and services.
You got it. And the more you understand how all this works, the better you can protect yourself.
It's definitely a lot to think about, but I feel way more informed than I did before we started this deep dive.
That's great to hear. And in part 3, we're going to take an even wider view and talk about some of the bigger ethical and societal questions all of this raises. So stay tuned.
Welcome back to the final part of our deep dive into Meta and privacy. We've covered how they collect and use our data and what we can do to manage it all.
It's been a lot.
It has. But now I want to kind of step back and think about the bigger picture.
Yeah.
The ethical and societal implications of all this data stuff.
Right, because Meta's approach to data is kind of a reflection of what's happening in society as a whole.
I see what you mean.
Yeah.
We live in this world now where data is like a commodity. It's a resource to be mined and analyzed, almost like the new gold rush.
Mm-hmm. And with their massive user base, Meta is leading the charge.
Right, all those interconnected platforms. It's a lot of data.
It is.
So how do we balance all the cool innovation that comes with this data revolution with, our basic right to privacy?
That's the million-dollar question.
It really is. It's such a tough one because, like we talked about, data can be used for good.
Absolutely.
To improve user experience, make things safer, even help with scientific discoveries.
All of that.
But then there's the potential downsides, right?
Right.
The misuse, the exploitation, maybe even the erosion of privacy in ways we don't even fully understand yet.
And that's why it's so important to keep having this conversation. We got to be aware of what's going on, think critically, and make sure our voices are heard.
I completely agree.
Yeah.
This isn't just about what companies are doing. It's about what we're doing as individuals and as a society. Every time we hit accept on a privacy policy, we're making a decision about our privacy, whether we realize it or not.
It's easy to just click through those things without thinking.
Yeah. But we got to move beyond that passive acceptance and become more aware of our digital footprint.
Right.
We need to push for more transparency, for simpler policies and controls that actually give us real choices.
We need to hold these companies accountable.
It's not just about individual actions. It's about systemic change.
Absolutely. This is a conversation for everyone, from regular users to companies to lawmakers.
We all need to work together to figure out this whole online privacy thing, especially in this increasingly digital world.
Yeah.
It's like What kind of digital world do we want to live in?
Exactly.
And what roles should data play in that world?
It's a journey, and we're all in this together.
That's such a great way to put it. We started with the specifics of Meta's privacy policies, but we ended up tackling some really big questions.
We did, didn't we?
Questions about privacy and ethics, and what it all means for our digital lives.
But we've also learned a lot about how data is shaping our online experiences and uncovered some tools and strategies for navigating this whole crazy world.
Yeah, and I think most importantly, we've emphasized how crucial it is to be informed. Ask questions, be an active participant in shaping a digital world that respects our privacy and gives us real choices.
Well said.
So keep learning, keep questioning, and keep this conversation going.
Knowledge is power. The more we understand how our data is being used, the better we can protect our privacy and push for positive change.
So true. And on that note, we're going to wrap up this deep dive.
Thanks for joining us.
Yep. Thanks for listening, everyone. Until next time, stay curious.